Fred.
Welcome to Everyone's for Connectivity, but what's it for? Who owns the data and who controls privacy? Hi, I'm Fred Fishkin. Thank you for joining in to watch or listen, and we hope you're staying safe. This event is made possible in part by support from the Smart Transportation and Technology ETF. Find out more at www.motoetf.com. Our provocateur for the discussion is Michael Senna, well-known transportation expert, consultant, and publisher of the Dispatcher newsletter. Our panel of sharks includes digital age pioneer, author, and consultant Brad Templeton, Roger Lanto, director automotive connected mobility, at Strategy Analytics, and the faculty chair of autonomous vehicle engineering at Princeton University, Alan Kornhauser. Our moderator is Compass Transportation and Technology president and founder, Dick Mudge. Dick?
Yeah, let's get going. Michael, I look forward to having you define all the questions and issues we should be talking about. Just make sure you don't give all the answers.
Thank you, Dick. Two-way vehicle connectivity is a three-sided coin that everyone wants to own. Two-way vehicle connectivity has three facets. Two of them are mainly of interest to vehicle OEMs and their suppliers. These are vehicle-centric and customer-centric. Vehicle-centric connectivity includes functions such as emergency notification, logistics tracking, and over-the-air updating. Customer-centric connectivity includes many services that are also provided by mobile apps outside of the vehicle, such as music streaming, workshop service booking, traffic notifications, and car sharing applications. Two-way vehicle connectivity today is a major competitive factor for the OEMs. The third vehicle connectivity facet is principally of interest to public sector traffic management authorities. It is focused on communicating warnings to vehicles and providing guidance on which roads to use in case of traffic congestion or emergencies. The public authorities view these roadway-centric functions as their domain, and vehicle-to-infrastructure and vehicle-to-vehicle communications as the tools to accomplish the job. They're grouped together under the term V2X. This third facet is not a competitive factor for the OEMs. If it is legislated, V2X will not distinguish one OEM from another, since every OEM will have to include it. Vehicle OEMs each have their own unique views on why they are implementing connectivity and how they intend to benefit from spending the time, effort, and money integrating the systems into their vehicles and building a service ecosystem. Some of them, like GM and Volvo, started with the idea that it enhanced their safety image. Some, like BMW and Ford, believed they would be able to use the data they collected for developing completely new services. Some, like Toyota, saw it as a way to deliver a better driving experience. For Tesla, connectivity is a fundamental part of its business. Today, most OEMs understand that an unconnected car is a lost opportunity for adding value to both their customers and to their own businesses. But make no mistake, their job is selling cars, and they compete fiercely to do so. There seems to be an unbridgeable gap of trust between the public sector and the automotive industry. Emissions, fuel economy, safety, space, noise. There's so much about cars and trucks for politicians and bureaucrats to dislike, to legislate against, and to tax. Even worse, if the automotive industry appears to be encroaching on a domain that has been served by the public sector, such as collection of traffic flow data, the delivery of roadway warnings, or the provision of emergency services, the public sector reacts by claiming the right to restrict or at least regulate those private sector initiatives. European eCall is a case in point. In the 1990s, wireless telephone systems and the global positioning system combined to offer a way to save lives in the event of a car crash by immediately notifying a call center operated by the OEM, who would then notify the official emergency providers. GM OnStar was first to offer this, followed by BMW, Volvo Cars, and PSA and eventually all the OEMs. The European Commission decided it was the sole right of public authorities to provide emergency services, and in 2002 began a process to ensure that all emergency notifications went directly to the public safety answering points, or PSAPs. Rather than just setting a standard, the Commission proposed a hardware solution, an in-band modem generating a short data message inside a 112 phone call. After 16 years, the Commission succeeded in mandating its in-band modem solution. All new type-approved cars starting on the 1st of April 2018 had to include the possibility of sending an EU e-call via the 112 voice channel. But the OEMs succeeded in keeping their third-party services, which most of them still use. As with EU eCall, with V2X, the public sector has gone beyond developing standards and allowing the private sector to develop solutions. The public sector has been promoting an in-vehicle solution communicating with roadside units for sending and receiving data messages. When V2X was first proposed in the late 1990s, digital short-range communications seemed to be the most desirable wireless technique for the in-vehicle systems and the associated roadside units. The technology was popularized for toll collection. Most importantly, it was viewed as free, like a 112 emergency call. But over the past 20 years, cellular technologies have progressed, and any advantages that 802.11p Wi-Fi-based technologies had appeared to be matched and surpassed by cellular systems. Then there is the simple fact that short-range communications do not address the vehicle-centric and the customer-centric functions. Like EU eCall, it is a one-trick horse. In some parts of the world, there is a pediment upon which the three-sided coin rests. The pediment represents the combined issues of personal privacy and data ownerships. Countries within the European Union have written what is called the General Data Protection Regulation, or GDPR, into their laws, which among other things means that individuals, not companies or governments, are the owners of their personal data. Service providers to the automotive industry within the EU, such as motor clubs and insurance companies, are using this right to insist that vehicle owners, not the OEMs, should determine which companies provide them with services. Assisted by the European Commission, they're also proposing in-vehicle solutions to the OEMs in addition to developing standards for message routing and content. The public transport management sector has concentrated the debate about connectivity on whether and how V2X should be provided and centered the debate on technology. The private automotive sector and their suppliers have concentrated the debate about connectivity on delivering value to customers in order to enhance their business competitiveness. Service providers have now entered the debate with the claim that they, not the OEMs, are the true guardians of personal privacy. But the debate is not really about technology, nor is it about who delivers the best value for the money or the most privacy. It is about control. The issue is who controls what is being installed in vehicles and who controls the messages that are being sent and received. The public sector is promoting a short-range communication solution in which the necessary roadside units are controlled by the public sector. Does this approach provide the best service to citizens, or is it desired because governments want to make sure that all data that are transmitted to and from the vehicles are controlled by the public and not the private sector? Will data connectivity managed by private companies, whether they are the vehicle OEMs or IT companies like Google, provide better services in all three areas of connectivity? Can the private sector be trusted to deliver services without exercising undue control over its customers by collecting and using their data? It is time that all of these connectivity issues are brought out into the open and discussed together, not individually, because the best solution will not be reached by the toss of a coin.
Thank you, Michael. I hope the best solution will be reached by this panel. That's the objective we provided for ourselves. The first shark I'll call on is Roger, since you're the brand new shark to this group. So you get a first crack at Michael.
Thank you, Dick. Thank you, Michael. That's certainly quite a bit of chum to churn through. I think there's a more fundamental issue at stake here. I sensed a hint of a unifying theme being mandated connectivity to vehicles, with eCall being cited for Europe and V2V being cited for the US. You forgot Contran 245 in Brazil, which of course has gone by the wayside, but that was a stolen vehicle tracking and recovery mandate that was regarded ultimately, after probably a couple $100 million being thrown away by the industry, as invading privacy was the reason for its being rejected ultimately. But I think there's a more fundamental issue in the automotive industry, which is almost all of the value for vehicle connectivity resides with the car manufacturer and or the dealer. Ever since the onset of the smartphone, the consumer is looking at connectivity as being in the palm of their hand. They don't need the connection in the car. They're bringing their connection into the car when they enter that vehicle. So basically, we have kind of a tough sell as an industry if we do, in fact, as an industry, believe that connectivity is in the industry's best interest. Now, you've raised a whole another, I don't know what analogy to use here, kettle of fish, nest of hornets, on the ownership of data. And certainly in Europe, they are wrestling with that. And that battle for control of the customer is unfolding with the aftermarket repair companies and insurance companies and car clubs, et cetera. They all want to plug directly into those connectivity platforms in the car, supersede the third party, the OEM's connectivity offering. This is aside from the direct connection to the PSAP. And it's a bit of a mess. And it's a mess that's been brought on by regulatory authorities and by a mandate. And the reason it's a mess is because more or less that technology that they mandated was not just the in-band modem. They more or less specified 2G. And of course, not all car makers use 2G modems, although we know car makers love to take the cheapest module they can get for anything they're putting in a car. But in this instance, there are millions of cars with eCall, with 2G, and the GSMA has notified the EU that they are looking to turn off the 2G networks across Europe by 2025. And the German VDA has said, oh yeah, well, we'd like you to keep them open and functioning until 2035, GSMA. So you've got a bit of a conflict there. This is aside from the fact that the EU would like to shift from an in-band modem data over voice approach to a voice over data VoLTE technology, which would make more sense in a world of LTE and 5G. So the EU is in a world of hurt, again, in the context of consumers are literally typically not coming onto the dealer lot or going to the OEM's website looking for a car with a connection. It's not a priority right now. Now, that may change, okay? It would be nice to have a market-driven solution. Tesla has put that market-driven solution into the market, and the market so far seems to be saying thumbs up. That value proposition is built on the over-the-air software updates. Interestingly, it's not focused at all on an eCall capability. And also it's essentially built also around adding value to the car after the sale, which is a sort of an industry holy grail, completely breaking the industry paradigm of sell it and forget it, and sell it and render it immediately obsolete. So Tesla's, breaking down all the barriers, completely disrupting the industry, and they're doing it with connectivity. But this is a market-driven approach, not a mandated approach.
Right. Exactly.
Oh, crying out loud. We don't need connections sometimes, but anyway.
Yeah.
So
could we, Michael? What do you have to come back and?
Everything.
Go ahead.
Everything that Roger has said is supporting all of the points that I've made in this, particularly the one that I'd like to highlight. I did mention that for Tesla, connectivity is fundamental. If anybody has a question about why we need long range connectivity, there's three letters. It's OTA, over the air updating of of firmware in the vehicle and software in the vehicle. This is a major point of all of the OEMs. The only car OEM today that's really doing this and doing it completely is Tesla. And there are reasons for it. There are many reasons for it. And I hope some of our sharks will be able to identify those. But this is from the standpoint of the OEMs, it's not a holy grail. It is the objective that needs to be achieved if the OEMs are going to achieve the goals of their connectivity. They've spent a lot of money in putting systems in the car, of creating ecosystems. And it's not just for helping roadside assistance. It's not just an emergency call. It goes well beyond that.
Yeah. Let's move on. Roger raised the debate issue about, do you have a market-oriented solution, which is kind of Tesla, or are the Europeans, the system that Michael described, is much more government-oriented? Brad, I'm sure you have opinions on all of that.
Yeah, there's actually, again, there are many, many types of connectivity being talked about. By the way, Michael, I'll technically correct you. Unless you buy Tesla's premium connectivity package, the over-the-air updates go over short-range communications. You have to pay if you want to do them over cellular. Otherwise, it's done in your garage over your own Wi-Fi. However, this is the kind of connectivity that indeed people want in cars. In fact, I will say that for computer security reasons, we want as little connectivity in the driving systems of a car as we can possibly get. And when I go out to the computer security world and I say, you know what the car people want to do? They want every car, which is a 1,500 kilogram robot wandering the streets, to exchange complex messages right into the core of its driving system with all the other random cars it encounters and random pieces of roadside infrastructure. And they will laugh. They will just laugh at the idea that anyone thinks that can be done without a great security risk. And because it's 1,500 kilogram robots, it's a serious problem. In fact, I think cars really should talk only to their headquarters, and they should talk with fear of their headquarters, because their headquarters might be compromised. It might be trying to take them over. And that is not the approach you see when you see almost all the car connectivity discussion going on, the V2V and V2X connectivity in particular. The truth is, the value of short-range communications, very short latency communications, that's what that's really for, is actually surprisingly minimal, because you need to make cars safe enough without it. You're never going to get, I put up my funny graphic here, that you're never going to, oops, that's not the thing we want to put there. You're never going to get all the deer to wear transponders. I mean, unless you can. And 20% of all accidents are with deer. You won't get all the pedestrians to wear transponders, and you won't even get all the car to wear transponders. And so you have to solve the problem with sensors. And what do you know? The self-driving car industry is working to make sensors cheap and effective, and will do so long before. But let's also look at how people use vehicles today and use connectivity in vehicles. In the back of every Uber I've ever seen, in fact, on every transit vehicle I see, people are sitting down, hunkered down, staring at their phone. That's their view of connectivity while they travel. And they like to have their connectivity in the form that they've chosen, the music and the services all configured by them. They hate the little connectivity box in the back of a New York taxi cab seat when you get into that taxi and it starts trying to advertise to you and blaring to you. They don't want the connectivity as designed by the vehicle. They want the connectivity as they have chosen it in the device that they get a new one of every 2 years. And anytime you have a competition between something you get a new one of every 2 years and something that's expected to last for 2 decades, like a car, the small every 2 year box is guaranteed to win. So it's kind of a false chase. And the other thing that you see, if you look at Google's Firefly prototype, which was the small 2-person prototype they made, if you look at the Cruise Bolt prototype that they advertised, if you look at the Cruise Origin, their new prototype vehicle, you don't actually see things in there for users to be interacting. The companies who are actually building the self-driving technology have no interest in V2V. They have no interest in V2X. Their main interest is the same thing you get from the car connectivity that works today, which is called Waze. And Waze is done through that little thing you get a new one of every 2 years. And it's free, and it tells you about hazards on the road up ahead. It doesn't do it with the accuracy that it could, because it doesn't need to. But all this technology has already been built there and built from the ground up rather than being mandated. How many of you are using your 25-year-old cell phone? Well, DSRC was laid out about 25 years ago. And it's very unlikely to me that anything that was mandated in communications 25 years ago will ever be tremendously successful in a world where things change every year.
Michael, do you have any reactions to those comments about, you know, that no one really cares about V2V or V2X?
Well, Brad and I have had a couple of discussions about the point of view of the vehicle OEMs, and I'm certain that that Brad has a point of view of those who would like to use cars as a medium for providing services, for helping customers, and doing all of these things, and that's great. I mean, that perspective is very important, because if you ignore that perspective, the OEMs are going to be providing services that nobody wants, which is not the case. I mean, the fact is that most, if not all, cars today have a connectivity component built into them, and they're all pretty much the same. They all have similar types of ecosystems, and they provide a full range of services. And one of them is traffic information. And some of them use Waze, some of them are based on Google, some of them are based on other types of systems. There's lots of opportunities, and there are lots of different approaches that can be taken. The point is, if an OEM wants to take an approach, or if a group of OEMs want to take an approach, but that approach is closed off by public authorities, whether those public authorities are the United States, in Canada, in Russia, in EU, in China, it doesn't matter. If those public authorities provide a solution which is mandated, we have a very different type of integration requirement. The point is that, as I said, it's the control of the data. It's who is providing that information. Many public authorities just cringe at the concept of having Waze decide what customers are going to be seeing and using in their cars. Others, and I'm working in a country where the public authority is a little bit more open and working very closely with not only with Waze, but here and several of the INRICs, trying to provide the best possible solution for the customers. There are different approaches in different countries as well. So I think, yeah.
Well,
was
hey,
going
whoa! I
No,
get a chance to
I can
jump
end there.
Alan
Come
started.
on,
I don't know. We have to. It's all fair.
and we want to get in. Sorry, Roger.
Go ahead.
I guess
Alan?
I have. I'm not part of this fight. I guess I'm just not part of it, because I guess the thing that I'm most interested about is providing mobility to everyone, and basically leveling the mobility playing field. And that probably means that, in fact, at least for some who can't own cars, the owning of the car is not the issue. The issue is what are the mobility machines that are going to be put out there to provide that mobility. And part of the issue there, and putting that out there, one of the key tenets of even having a concept of affordable mobility that is of high quality for almost anybody, is to basically be able to do it without two things. One, without great investment in infrastructure and overhead associated with that. And the second piece is, if you're not going to provide the free labor yourself to provide the driving, find a way, develop a way to provide free mobility or very inexpensive mobility to do the driving. And that's where the automation comes in. And if one really wants to do that and do that safely, and one looks at where communication fits in, I sort of am in a point where it has to be, the intelligence has to be in the vehicle. It has to go out there and drive defensively, and it has to be able to do that affordably with maybe just one vehicle out there, and then with two, and then with four, and then with 8 and 16, and then grow to market. And it has to do that affordably, essentially from the beginning. So if in fact you're going to put on top of that, now I have to do communications, that's like saying I have to build a separate automated highway for it. You know, we went through the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the aughts until 2004 or 5, thinking that we needed a exclusive roadway for automated transportation. finally somebody said, my goodness, if you do it and you put the intelligence in one vehicle and it goes out and uses the infrastructure that exists and doesn't ask anything from anybody except for maybe paint, then maybe it has the opportunity to start and become a mobility system that would in fact provide a more level playing field of mobility for all sectors of the society. So that's where I come at it. So in a sense, yes, communications, of course. If I'm going to have a fleet, as a fleet owner, absolutely I'm going to have communications. I have to manage my fleet. I have to do it optimally. I have to have customer service. I have to deliver value and so on. Of course, I'm going to do that with communications. But I'm going to do that as it grows, as it scales from the entity that's providing that mobility, as opposed to saying it's got to be required of everybody, and have this gizmo or that gizmo. So I'm sort of outside this fight. Thank you.
Well, this goes back a little bit to what Michael talked about. In Europe, there's a pressure to have a centralized mandate about the type of controls. In the US, that's not the issue. I mean, so far the U.S. has avoided that. It's up to each of the companies to do what they feel like. Is that a good long-term solution or not?
Well, what I wanted to say before I so rudely interrupted Alan was that it sounded from Michael's preamble that he was talking about the public ownership of vehicle data, and he alluded to it again in his last comment. And I'm not sure anybody's too excited about that prospect. I mean, the single thing that might send people willingly into Google's arms might be government ownership of vehicle data. I think the whole purpose of V2X is for there not to be any reservoir of data. It's just for data to be flowing and not stored. But there is an issue with data, and there's a lot of misconceptions, I think. And I've yet to see a car company really achieve what would seem to make sense from a sort of an automotive data hygiene standpoint. Some companies have tried, like BMW, to give the customer, and I'm a BMW owner, and I have a portal where I can see at least some of the data that they're gathering from my car. I'm not convinced that that's all the data that they're gathering. And I have some ability, or I will, once they fully launch BMW car data in the US, the ability to identify which marketing partners I'm willing to allow them to share my data with. So there you have transparency and you have control, which to my mind equals trust. The problem is we've all seen the stories about the journalists, hacking into their GM vehicle and then contacting GM OnStar and saying, hey, can I get the data that you've got on me? And basically saying no. And meanwhile, if you get a GM executive on stage at an industry event, they will say, oh, the customer owns the data. Okay, but the customer can't get access to the data. So there seems to be a little bit of a missing bit of code to get this straight in the industry. And the other thing it's missing that's on your phone, so at least BMW is giving me a website where I will eventually be able to initiate privacy to various partners of theirs. I think some people want a button in the car that can just turn the connection off when they want it turned off. But I don't think even Tesla will give you that.
Yeah. But let me jump into that. We had one of the questions we had from the audience said, what's the value of all this data? Does anyone want to guess what the value of it is in a car?
I think McKinsey said it's $850 billion.
Yeah, I will certainly tell you it's greatly overestimated by some of the people who come up with numbers, but I can't say I have an accurate number. I just know that their numbers are much too high. There's this phrase that goes on, data is the new oil, which I'm sure the oil industry doesn't find very attractive as a phrase. It's not. Data is not the new oil. Data are useful, and people are going to use them. And I actually must say the one thing about DSRC I do like is the ephemerality you described. If the government were to play a role in this, it would be nice if they were to mandate more ephemerality of some of this data.
Yeah, I think I was just going to say the misconception about the value of vehicle data is that car companies think it's a question of just peddling individual vehicle data. The real value comes from aggregating data with which people have presumably opted in to share and there's anonymization, et cetera, but new value propositions created from that data because there's valuable information to be had, presumably a lot of it associated with safety and collision avoidance.
The common misperception actually is that your personal data is valuable. It's worth pennies, maybe a few bucks, your personal data. It is only the large collections which are of value to anybody. And a lot of people have said, why do we make them pay us for our data? No, if you got paid the value of your data, you'd wish you'd never asked for that.
Yeah. Well, this person, by the way, threw out a number and said, is it worth $35,000 per car per individual? And I guess, Brad, you'd say it's worth much less than that.
Well, it's funny, at Google, when we started, if it was first revealed we were making a car, because Google is at its heart an advertising company, a lot of people came in and said, oh, so you making this car so you can give rides for free and just show ads to people while they drive around. Mm-hmm. And right now, operating a car costs about $20 an hour. And even the most effective advertising platforms in the world make about $1.50 an hour from someone's time, unless they're like for super rich people or something like that. So that would definitely be the tail wagging the dog.
Yeah, I was going to bring on one of the people in the audience who is already sending a lot of notes and who was an honorary shark last week, Kara Cockleman. Jeremiah, can you make Kara live?
Yeah, we need someone who likes DSRC, so please come in, Kara.
I'm not. I'll let her speak for herself. My guess is she likes DSRC for certain narrow uses, but I'm not sure where she is.
Well, I guess.
Well, we're going to have the equivalent of DSRC functionality when CV to X is more widely deployed.
Cellular V2X.
Cellular.
Yeah, when it may, you mean if it shows up in phones, not in cars?
No, it shows up in cars.
In
Cellular
cars
V2X
too.
in
For starting in 2022.
Because what I've floated, but the FCC has so far not found it interesting, is that they should in fact return the 5.9 gigahertz spectrum back to open use, or actually never was, but make it open use like Wi-Fi, which is the proposal, or the proposal is to do half of it. But just mandate that every mobile device, including phones that wants to use that spectrum, implement a car protocol. And that would actually get you short-range car messages going on between every car within 3 years, as opposed to CV2X won't be deployed for a decade or two to all cars.
Okay, maybe we have Kara.
Yeah, we do have. Well, we have Kara's picture.
Jeremiah, turn on her.
Hopefully that means we have Kara's voice as well.
Yeah,
Kara,
no, I'm on microphone, but I don't have any other questions other than those I've put in the chat box.
Okay.
Can you
say them?
Can
you tell them what they are, because we don't see them.
Yeah, we don't always see all the chat box.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I heard some of you responding. I know that Brad, for example, must have seen something because he responded dead on. Brad, are you able to see the chat box?
Yeah, I can see it. It's just when we're going like we're going, we don't always read 6 windows at once, and I apologize.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah. You were saying the vehicle data is redundant to the phone data?
Well, that was one of the minor things I said. Yeah.
Okay.
Do you feel the vehicle data is very different? I know if it's an electric vehicle, they like to know when it's charging, and that helps for research and planning, design of future electric vehicles. But what's so special about the vehicle that you want to keep connected to it?
There is a second use for electric vehicles, by the way, which is in the long-term plan of most electric grids to be able to tell electric cars when to charge. Now, that can be a one-way communication so that they don't all immediately start charging at the same time, and you can balance the grid by telling the cars when they charge and when they don't. So that's actually pretty strong use of, again, not live connectivity, but having a cell phone or Wi-Fi in the car.
Usually, yeah, that's local. So they're not speaking to the cloud when they want to know. They're watching at the second by second level for the grid stability to decide when to charge. And yeah, we have papers on that. So that's a very local connectivity, I think, need.
Actually, most of the plans I've seen have involved the communication going over general internet, including the cell phone version of it. But there are some ones that work directly with EVSE.
Did you feel we weren't addressing the efficacy of DSRC for collision avoidance sufficiently?
Well, I'd love to know a little bit more about that. I think Surya said there's just no way that it can be used to avoid collisions. And I've heard that in really congested settings that it just doesn't run fast enough for collision avoidance when there's a lot of basic safety messages trying to transfer, but I'm not sure.
Well, even if it were able to get all the messages through, the main thing it's valuable for would be detecting potential collisions with what they'll call occluded vehicles, something that's blocked by a building or a big minivan in front of you. And those collisions do happen, and you could learn something about them. But it's a relatively minor use case compared to all the other use cases out there.
Well, I've always thought, and this is for long-term self-driving as well, that you would have a third reader up above. And so those occluded cases would be avoided at corners and such. And that would be very helpful at intersections, for example, where there tend to be a lot of collisions, that it would read that. Usually you have to have line of sight for DSRC.
It can bounce a little bit, but no, actually, I'm totally with you. I think the simplest thing would be to take the most dangerous controlled intersections in the United States or in any country and put a little camera on that sees if someone's running the red light and turns all the lights red in all direction when that happens. And that would actually signal every car, not just the ones with DSRC, that there's a potential intersection collision, and it would do a lot more.
But it isn't the easiest thing to do at those intersections is to slow down and maybe take away some of the occlusions. I mean, come on.
Yeah, that's like saying just say no to drugs.
To say that we're well, yeah, but there, the objective, I think, is better to take the human out of the loop.
No, it's not.
And so on. So I don't know.
Whatever. Well, the fundamental significance here, and we haven't really gotten into the 5G conversation, but 5G will introduce vehicle-to-vehicle communications as an inherent part of the wireless connection, the cellular connection in the car, which is a game changer for the industry. Suddenly, that annoying and very expensive connected vehicle proposition, which is a cash sink and a source of cost for most car makers, suddenly becomes not only an opportunity for customer engagement and retention, but collision avoidance and safety. So safety becomes relevant. And Brad,
I want to disagree. Really?
Oh,
this is what you want to do. This is how you want to do collision avoidance. We've gone through 130 years of this car with collision avoidance without this kind of communications where the control system in the vehicle is doing it by itself, looking around at the environment and then stopping from crashing.
You're opposed, Alan, you're opposed to cellular V2X communications? You're opposed to it?
No, I'm not. I do it, but not to do collision avoidance.
I'm opposed to them.
Not to do. I mean, what? That's better than putting intelligence in the vehicle and not going and hitting something and staying between the lanes. Really, and you have to have all the vehicles out there doing it.
You don't have to do anything. No. I'm really.
So what are you going to use it for? If it's going to be able to coordinate between two vehicles, the probability has to be that each of them have it. So you have to multiply those probabilities together.
That's right. So it's the square of the penetration is this percentage of chance.
Absolutely.
But I don't understand what your gentlemen are talking about, because we're going to be putting 5G devices in cars.
In new vehicles,
Put them.
Yes, exactly.
Use it for whatever other things you want to do, but
so the reason is the graphic I have behind me here, right? It's the thing we teach people in computer security is the same thing you teach children. Don't talk to strangers. The idea that you're going to be exchanging messages with every car you encounter, that's just a crazy idea.
Yeah, but it's a comes with idea. You'd have to delete the capability from 5G in the future.
If they give me a car like that, I'm gonna try and cut that wire. Now, it wouldn't be a wire, because as you say, it would be integrated into it. No, it's a terrible computer security idea, and the benefit is meager. And almost all that benefit, in fact, that benefit is achieved in a better sense just by the fact that cheap sensor technology and cheap perception technology is being developed in the self-driving industry, and will make it available for a lower cost that vehicles can perceive all the non-occluded obstacles on the road. So that leaves only the occluded ones, and there's just not enough of them to justify the security risk we're talking about.
We need a little parsimony here, Where's a parsimonious solution? Dick, let's go on to some other. Let's get Neil and so on in here.
We could go on this topic for an hour, but let me. We have Neil Peterson just joined us. Neil is the executive director of Transportation Research Board and has all. We don't have time to talk about all the other things he's done, Neil, do you have any comments or questions or corrections for this group?
Thanks, Dick. So I have several things I could talk about, but I want to start with one of Michael's points that he made in the introduction, where he was really saying that what the public sector's motivation was primarily control. And I guess having spent most of my public sector and really knowing what my colleagues are trying to do, especially within state DOTs, their motivation is almost 100% driven by safety. And I've actually been a little bit disappointed that I have not heard a lot more discussion about safety in the discussion that we've had thus far. Alan makes the point that you're not going to be able to have connectivity everywhere, and therefore we have to be relying on automated vehicles being able to drive without connectivity. And he's absolutely right. But at the same time, connectivity can provide a lot of additional information to the vehicles that can help improve safety. And I think that's really where the public sector is coming from in terms of their major motivation.
Can you tell me what this lot of information you're referring to is? Because I've studied hard and I cannot find it.
No, I think truckers use CBs to get information back and forth for the last, 75 years? Okay, there has been a communications. There's some certain amount of information that you'd like to know about the road ahead. Of course, have sensors that detect slippery conditions and make that available to the vehicles behind you. If a bridge is out, of course, make it available.
Well,
but this is the kind of this is really valuable information.
All right, Alan, I don't know if Neil's seen the video of the Taiwan Tesla crash, and I think Brad has, but he hasn't written up his analysis of it yet. But I dare say if Tesla had made some kind of provision for a service to be provided by that highway, say it's an intelligent highway system where that camera, and it wouldn't take that much sophistication to be able to identify a massive truck having overturned, blocking that lane, and to send messages to all incoming cars, there is a truck blocking the lane on this highway. So you don't have to worry about using your sensors. This is exactly where the truck is. You need to slow down, Mr. Very Sophisticated Tesla Computer Automated Driving System. You don't have to rely on... Yeah, well,
of course.
I would say
maybe Tesla will not provide that. Okay, recognizing that they don't have it in there. They should have recognized it with the Joshua Brown crash. They should have justified it when the first one of these things.
This does not require a Wi-Fi 802.11p Wi-Fi solution.
Right, I'm talking cellular. I'm talking a cellular connection.
Yeah, if you're talking vehicle to cloud, of course, vehicle to cloud has already happened. It's in my car in Waze already.
But you were just dismissing it, Brad.
No, I'm not dismissing. Sorry, I'm not dismissing vehicle to cloud. Of course, you want to learn from the cloud that there's a problem on the road up ahead of you. Of course, you want to learn that the road is out or that there's a slippery ice or anything else that can be protected from you. But you get that by communicating with your headquarters. You don't get it by asking the government to set up a network to do that. You don't. I mean, the government can contribute data to the cloud. It already does.
Now you're talking about DSRC again. Sounds like.
No. Okay. Well, or CV2X. All right. What I'm talking about is that you want safety data from the cloud. Now that Tesla, on the other hand, well, obviously it would be nice if it had known there was a truck across the road and it had stopped because of that before it even saw it. It would be unacceptable for a self-driving car to have the perception of the current Tesla. The current Tesla is an ADAS system. It expects the driver to be monitoring. It doesn't recognize the tops of trucks because it's never seen the top of a truck in its training. Now, by the way, I should mention, we have not confirmed that the autopilot was on for that accident, so I'm not ready to condemn autopilot having failed there.
It's a strong
but it does fail in situations like that, and that is because it is an ADAS system. It is not expected to succeed in those situations. But when you eventually want to be a full self-driving car, which Tesla does want to be, in fact, Elon Musk said he'd be releasing that in 2019. When you get to that level, then obviously it is unacceptable to have to depend in any way on communications to know there is a truck across the road in front of you.
I'd like to respond to Neil, and
I was about to ask you too.
His issue is that we haven't discussed safety, and I think We have, Neil. We have been discussing safety. It's not a question of whether the OEMs or whether service providers or anybody is in favor or not in favor of safety. It's how that is implemented. And the solutions that have been provided right now, and also the issue of control that we've discussed. The issue is whether the government agencies, whether they're road authorities or national authorities or local authorities, whether it's the responsibility of those authorities to collect, manage, and distribute messages, or if that can better be done by a range of systems. Some of them are public, some of them are private, that can be provided to everyone using systems that are developed by the industry as opposed to systems that are mandated by the government. That's the issue. That was my point.
Okay, but there is certainly data that government can be providing that is going to help make the entire system safer as a result.
Yes, absolutely.
Nobody's even addressed the issue of intersections where a very large portion of crashes take place today. And if vehicles can be getting traffic signal data being transmitted in real time to them so that they know when traffic signals are going to be changing, that can be a game changer in terms of intersection.
Or the integration of cameras that could identify a car that's not stopping.
Yes.
Yeah, those have been, unfortunately, and I say unfortunately, those have been outlawed in certain states and in certain countries as an inhibitor or something that is not.
Oh, you're talking about a red light camera. That's a little different.
Yeah,
that's different. Yeah.
That's what I've said. Our cars today, every car that's built can be made to stop at a red light. It can be made to stop at a red light. It will never go through a red light. It will never go through a stop sign. They can be made to stop. Just like every car today can be made to impede anyone who is over a limit of alcohol or drug content from even starting the car. I've said many times, we know how many of accidents and deaths are caused by alcohol and drug usage. It's over. In some instances, it's huge.
That's the next debate, not this one.
You're arguing again for more federal or national mandates on these things. Is that right?
That's not a system mandate. That's a different kind of a mandate. It's not mandating what kind of systems are putting in the vehicle. In this case, it's the infrastructure that we need to work with.
Now, I
think. Sorry, go ahead, Brett.
Well, the government can provide data, and there is data that government provide. And I've mentioned Waze a couple of times, but I think the story of Waze is a fascinating one because cities and governments all around the world were trying to measure traffic in their cities, trying to get data on what was going on, where accidents were. They spent millions and millions of dollars trying to put inductive loops in the roads or cameras on every highway to count the cars, and bought all those car counting systems you see at the ITS conferences. And then a couple of guys in Tel Aviv put together a free app and give it out, and suddenly they've got the traffic data on the whole world. It just tells you the efficacy of the different approaches. Not to say that governments can't and shouldn't provide data, but they may not be the ones to depend on getting it to you as quickly as you can.
Yeah.
I'm not arguing that, by the way. But
go ahead.
The more data that the public sector can be providing, the safer we're going to make the conditions. And we ought to be trying to facilitate data from the infrastructure that can be provided to the vehicle so that the vehicle can be operating not just based on their sensor data. That's my point.
Well, I want to clarify one sort of point of confusion, and that is it is true that some DOTs are shifting from DSRC to CV2X technology, but more importantly, perhaps, the cellular networks themselves are shifting to CV2X and then will evolve to 5G release 16 over a period of a few years. And many of them are putting in microcells, so de facto infrastructure without public funding. And so the ability to have infrastructure support will be coming from the private sector. I don't think we're going to have a DSRC deployment, which would be tens of billions of dollars to do in the U.S. anyway. I do want to make take another exception to something.
Make it very brief because we need to move on.
We've been talking. Let's have some of our audience.
Neil, conversation began to talk about state DOTs and what do they really want to do. Cynthia Jones is a senior executive at Ohio DOT, very active in technology, very active at TRB, and she may have an opinion. Cynthia?
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Dick and Neil. Couldn't agree more. So in Ohio, we absolutely want safety. And we believe that that is supported by having standards and interoperability. We have joined some coalitions and are working with some other states, like in the Connected Vehicle Pooled Fund, which has more than 24 other states, and then the Smart Belt Coalition. I guess to our eyes, if we can get in with a number of other states and build some consistency in the applications and how things will be used, we believe that that will encourage OEMs to make the investment and have that be accessible. We're also very interested in ground and air, having safety and technology, but we're actually technology agnostic. So DSRC or C-V2X, we want to have the system that will have data, and we don't intend to mandate it. So we're working with those other states, but we have invested in a statewide standards framework. So dealing with MPOs and IPS architecture integration, doing system and software requirements and ConOps, just to help build somewhat of a framework that can be open and support connectivity. And I would say, absolutely, we look forward to private investment in helping with connectivity, because we can't afford to do it all, but we absolutely value the impact and the spread of that to support the safety case.
Okay. And any comments or reactions to that? I mean, that's not talking about the OEMs very much.
Well, the OEMs, the OEMs have, as I said, have invested an enormous amount of money. There isn't a single OEM that I know of today that does not have a system in their vehicle which is capable of communicating out and taking communications in. All of the OEMs now are connected. They have the ability to process messages. They have the ability to send data to wherever the data needs to be, and to receive messages that can be processed and used in their systems. That connectivity is there, and it's to be used. Developing parallel standards, developing parallel processes and parallel methods is, in my view, it's a waste of time. Use the systems that are in the vehicle.
More fundamentally, and I think you would agree with this, Michael, there's no business model for DSRC for the automakers. There's no business model.
Irrespective of DSRC, whether it's DSRC or cellular V2X, it doesn't make any difference to me. There's no business model for the OEMs to be involved in putting systems in their vehicles that do one thing. I mean, the systems are there now to be able to communicate all kinds of messages, whether it's emergency e-call or roadside assistance or theft notification or tracking, or open the car so that somebody can put food in the trunk. All of those things are capable. The systems are capable of doing today, and they go further than that. They're able to process data, and BMW is a leader in this field, to be able to send data, traffic flow data, traffic information data, and then use that data in processing information. And as we expand the systems that are used now, for example, Google is now coming into the vehicle, not as an app, but as a full integration, as an operating system. Pluses and minuses of that, and I've written both of those. But with that capability, we have many more opportunities to provide the information that the vehicles and the customers need.
All right, Michael, are you saying the connectivity problem solved?
It's been solved for 20 years.
Okay.
It's just that
I'm glad you didn't say that as your first comment.
Many people want another solution. The solution is there. It's in the vehicles, and it's gone from 2G to 3G to 4G, and very soon we'll be into 5G systems in the vehicles that'll be able to do all kinds of other things. And that progression has gone through from the first system, the AMPS system that General Motors and OnStar put in.
Okay, let's not go too far back in time here.
Let's have Baruch come in and
officially we close in 1 hour.
Minutes. But let's come on, Baruch.
But Baruch Feigenbaum, do you have from Reason Foundation? I'm sure you have something to say.
I do. But I'm going to try to behave myself and ask a general question going back to the data and the security. And it seems like, I know as we've been talking along, Roger's been saying that if we don't have security, or if we have issues with people's data being stolen, that's going to be a barrier to implementation. And I tend to agree with that. If you look at the government agencies, nobody trusts them to have data, but even some of the private companies, Google and Apple, the acceptance of them having data has sort of decreased as people have found out what information they have. And so, and I agree with Brad that the less they have, the better, but we still need some level of security there. And I don't know that I've seen a good plan that shows how this data is going to be secure. And so I'm wondering if there's a plan, and also about the idea of whether people can control their own data. We've talked about how when they start out, automated vehicles are going to be shared, we think. And so the question is, in a shared vehicle, who is going to have access to that data and who's going to own it?
Very big problem. And we already have the problem with Uber, right? Everyone rides in an Uber. Uber gets a record of where you go. They pull in your credit card. Michael, are you muted?
I don't drive. I don't ride an Uber.
Oh.
Well, okay. So not everyone does it.
I don't do Google. I don't use Waze.
But
So,
you use Copilot.
Yes.
And do you have so you don't have a Google phone? You don't have
Nope.
an app? Okay. Well, so and I'm one of the tinfoil hat people sometimes in my life too. But unfortunately, we're a minority, and most people actually do give in to these things. And so it is a big challenge. And actually, there's, obviously there's a battle that goes on whether the European approach to this is the right approach or whether the American non-approach is the right approach. But this is a battle that exists outside of automotive.
With regard to vehicle security, I want to take some exception to Brad's suggestion that DSRC is a massive vulnerability. I wouldn't want to suggest that there aren't vulnerabilities to DSRC or any connectivity proposition, but I would submit that no car can be certifiably secure without a connection, actually. That's not to say it's not a challenge to solve the vehicle security issue. You're putting it, Baruch, on the question of data security, which is a slightly different question. All I would say about that is that, we have the auto ISAC in the US. They're working on that problem every day. Meanwhile, there are hackers in China like Keen Security working every day to bust through. And there are ethical and non-ethical hackers all over the world, actually suddenly more interested in cars than they ever were. So cars are now on the battlefield of data security and vehicle security or system security. But I don't think we achieve that security without connectivity. I think we have to leverage connectivity to achieve security.
So, I would say that a completely disconnected car is fairly safe from computer intrusion. Your old 57 Chevy is probably not going to be taken over through the internet. But I'm saying minimal connectivity only to headquarters, and even that put under great scrutiny. Connectivity to other end. When you work on the internet, the whole reason it's not actually impossible to secure a computer on the internet that doesn't talk to. It's the problem is servers and things that take connections from everywhere, or things that visit every website. These are the things that are vulnerable. Cars that exchange messages with every piece of roadside equipment and every other car they encounter. That's what's vulnerable.
I think as we titled this session, we titled it connectivity, everybody's in favor of it. The question is what are the details and what are some of the nuances and what are some of the aspects of it that would allow it to actually go out and deliver all the values and benefits that all of us have been talking about. So I think that we are actually making progress in all this, and I think
I'll give you one success story. So way back at the beginning of our conversation, I talked about what we really need is a market-driven approach, consumer demand for connectivity. And there are some green shoots out there, and I'll give you one example. So GM Super Cruise. So if you want to use Super Cruise, which is sort of fancy cruise control, geofenced to a couple 100,000 miles of highway, turns out people love that feature, which is only available, I think, today on 1 or 2 GM vehicles, but very soon, within a year or two, will be available on 22 GM vehicles. And I do love the debate as to whether Super Cruise should be added to the Corvette. Is that somehow antithetical? But you don't get Super Cruise. It doesn't work without an OnStar subscription. So now and they've found that I believe they claim, and of course it's in their interest to so claim at GM, that 85% of Super Cruise users would not buy another vehicle without Super Cruise. So that suggests a demand-driven value proposition for a vehicle connection. I think that's worthy of some note.
Yeah, that's a good point to close
Great.
on. Again,
Yes,
we'll be
very
back
good.
officially this thing closes on the hour. We'll be back afterwards to keep on talking. Fred, do you want to close it out?
Sure, Dick. A great discussion. This has been everyone's for connectivity, but we will be back with more, most likely later this month, and welcome your thoughts about topics and participants. You can find us at zoom-tank.com and at smartdrivingcar.com. Don't forget the Automated Vehicles Symposium is still slated for the end of July in San Diego. The info is at automatedvehiclessymposium.org. Thank you for taking part, and we hope you stay healthy and safe. And for those of you who would like, you are welcome to stay online with us here to continue the discussion. Dick?
Yeah, very good. Well, we'll keep on going for a little while longer.
Yeah, and please raise your hands or indicate that you would like to speak in person. We like interactivity.
Right. And Jeremiah, if you can, direct us to some people or whatever, let's bring some more people on. Or if the people that we have on have a little bit more to say, please. Kara, Baruch.
Cynthia.
Cynthia.
I didn't mean to cut everybody off, but we have a little more time now if we miss some of your comments or reactions. Nope. Okay.
But I think we like Brad's backgrounds.
Well, I did this one before, but it is in fact what people are going to do in their cars is what they're going to use the connectivity for. Is mostly to talk to the outside world, to watch Netflix and do video calls. You will be doing that in your self-driving car come a few years from now.
Yeah, with driverless cars, of course, there's going to be a big pipe in there to provide communications for safety and for customer service and so on. It's a great opportunity to improve the value proposition. And again, as I always love to use the elevator as the analogy, is there an elevator that doesn't have a camera in there checking out and seeing what's going on? Of course, you have to do this with at least those systems. The ones that we end up owning, whether or not we're going to let them in there or whether or not we're going to go in and clip the wires because we don't want to, that's each of our individual decisions.
I disagree that there should be a camera inside the taxi. I mean, I think there should be a camera that can photograph the inside when I leave it to see if I messed it up or left something in it. But while I'm physically inside it, I don't think there's any reason they need to be able to look at me.
Yeah, well, I don't know if there's any reason for them to be in elevators. I just think they happen to be, and that's there. Maybe they're,
Maybe you do weirder things in elevators than I'm aware of.
Well, hey, as I like to say, I love to kiss my wife in the elevator so that everybody can see it. It's a great opportunity, and I take every opportunity I can.
People have done much more than kiss each other in cars. I'll just let you know.
Well,
in elevators too, but
never mind.
So Brad, the question of cameras in cars, I think, is for dynamic ride sharing when you have strangers sharing the same vehicle, not so much for Alan and his wife.
Yeah, sure.
No, I agree. If you want to have, I believe actually that we'll probably move towards vehicles that are special purposed and actually have individual compartments, and they have 4 doors and they have 4 compartments, so that they isolate the people. And the reason we'll do it is not because of fear of attack by the other occupants, but because of COVID.
Yeah, well, for
another
whether it's
fan
COVID,
of partitions, yeah,
whether it's COVID or something else, I think certainly with respect to passenger perception of safety and security, there probably has to be an oversight. There has to be somebody.
There will be some oversight, but we don't want a panopticon world just to make ourselves a little safer in cars. I don't think we want it.
I was struck, by the way, by one of Michael's comments describing all the things the OEMs have done with connectivity. And the question I have is, how much more is there to do?
There's plenty. I mean, as I said, Tesla.
What's missing?
Tesla has no one has gone as far as Tesla with over-the-air updating, and yes, over-the-air updating is primarily overnight, sitting in a garage or sitting somewhere where there's a Wi-Fi connection. It's not done while the car is driving. That's a huge problem. But the systems that are used are identical to the systems that are used for other communications.
Yeah,
They're
you
the
build
same.
you build the internet, and then you build applications on top of it. It's kind of worked before.
Well,
Yeah,
think of it.
exactly, right.
Think of it this way: the car is a browser, and we talked a little bit, probably not enough, about Google's interest in getting in the car. Google has almost a complete view of your social graph, but there's a big black hole in the middle of it is whatever you're doing in your car. That's why they're working so hard to get in your car, because everything you do in that car is an indication of intent, and there's a good chance you're on your way to conduct some sort of commercial value proposition, and Google would like to influence that.
Well, I can tell you from the standpoint of Chauffeur and Waymo as it is now, that's completely not true. I mean, I'm not there anymore.
The car is a browser, is all I'm saying.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, is Google's
We don't
motivation
believe you,
around
Brett.
building Waymo was not what you just
I'm
said.
not talking about their motivation for Waymo. I'm talking about Android Auto.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that,
you're one of those people I don't want to disagree with, you know?
No. I mean, I think Android Auto. I'm not sure Android Auto was even built to control your life, but what they did want to make sure. But what they did want to make sure is that because I think customers want that, which is when I get into a car which has got a different interface, I actually want the smarts in my phone, and Android Auto says make the screen of the car be the screen of my phone, although in a very bad way, and Apple CarPlay is exactly this terrible as well, but. I think that actually the getting data on people while you're in there is probably, I think it's just they want to continue to have the phone be the center of your life.
But bringing the contextual experience that you have on your phone into your car and taking advantage of the bigger screen. And maybe also tapping into the APIs that control your HVAC and your windows and your trunk. And they'd really like to get the APIs for all the sensors on the vehicle, but
I don't think Android Auto has those APIs right now, does it?
But the
Google
OEMs...
Google Automotive Services, GAS.
Roger, do you really believe that that's what they want to do? I mean, one of the things I tell my students, one of the things that the brain does really well is it forgets. I mean, if you look at our bodies and the amount of data that is being generated from every one of our nerve endings, and it decides a lot of it is just garbage. And therefore, I just need to focus on the important piece. And just to sit there and data gather all this stuff, I mean, really? Don't you have a better life than that? I mean...
Follow me here. Okay, so the point is, there's a view in the industry, I think, and I could be completely mistaken, that we want to deliver a contextualized experience in the car that's, I mean, I can tell you that the apps that survey respondents and focus group respondents tell us everywhere on the planet, whether it's China, Europe, or North America, is traffic, weather, and parking. When they're driving, they want to know information about traffic, weather, and parking.
But if I'm in a driverless car, I'm not going to park it. I don't care about parking.
Now you're jumping to driverless cars.
Well, that's the only thing that's of interest to me. So I don't know what you guys or gals are interested in.
Connected cars. Connected cars is what we're talking about. Yeah. So if you're an automaker, you want to deliver the ultimate contextualized experience and have some stiff competition, because the radio gives you a contextualized experience for free. And it's immediately on, and then you can turn it off. But Google wants to feed into your social graph. So, your search history, your email, your contacts, your calendar, and build that into the traffic, weather, and parking information.
Let me go back to Cynthia, because
Cynthia, come on, help me out here.
I'd be curious, because you've been listening.
Show
to
some video.
Is any of this conversation useful to you when you go back to Columbus?
We certainly care very much, like I said, about safety. I personally am not passionate or close to, is it DSRC, is it CV to X? As far as security, we are absolutely concerned. So we are not as interested, though, from a state perspective, on whether a person gets to watch Netflix in their Tesla. That's not a concern, but the cybersecurity and making sure that when we receive data or share data, that it is validated, that it is certified, that we don't introduce this additional risk and complexity to the system. I mean, we have a great traffic management center, and they are using the data that they see, and clearly there are not that many connected vehicles online. We actually have the Smart Columbus, their project will be getting some onboard units in vehicles. We have another project northwest of Columbus that will put some connected vehicle onboard units together. We do see this like as a test, though. I mean, you need to have some of it so you can see, how does it work? What is it good for? What are the issues? We know there's been a lot done in academics, which is excellent. We want to try some test deployments ourselves too.
Well, and then what are you going to communicate to the driver and how?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so that's completely related to, we have an onboard unit, but then what's the communication device back to them? Some of the collaboration we're having with other states, neighboring states, we want to make sure that the way we design an app that is for a spat message or for a pedestrian warning or whatever it be, has some consistency so that our drivers are not confused, that we sort of leverage all of that work. If we can agree on something that is effective and useful, we'll go ahead and do that.
So, Cynthia, you mentioned an onboard unit. What do you mean when you say onboard unit?
Well, we've looked at what they've done down in Tampa and other devices. So frankly, I don't know what Columbus is explicitly doing. I don't know what their device is, but Marysville, that we as the state are running, we haven't decided yet if that will be a tablet or some other mechanism.
Yeah. So getting back
to the
COVID
question, situation is confusing things.
Yeah. The question that Dick asked me, what else do we need to do? The systems that are in the vehicles today, every single system that's in every single new car built today, the communication system, the connectivity system, would be capable of receiving a message. It doesn't. There are no other onboard units that are required. There's nothing else that you need to put in the vehicle. All of the systems are there to be communicated with, as long as you use the communications technology that all of these systems are using, which is cellular.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, Michael, because you have to get the automaker to obviously permit the message to go through to be displayed to the user the way they want it.
Brad, come on. I'm talking about what's in the vehicle. That issue is a non-issue. If you're talking about the difference between telling all the OEMs that they have to put another onboard unit in order to be able to get the messages versus using the systems that are already in the cars,
sure, but I think what they're talking about
is
they're talking about a prototype project, and when you want to do a prototype project, you can't modify all the cars. You've got to
You don't need to modify all the cars. You buy a new anything, and anything has already a connectivity device in the vehicle.
Of course, but it doesn't do the function they want to experiment with.
Sure, it doesn't. You're right, Brad. And we are retrofitting cars that are owned, but we're not buying cars for these projects.
Yep.
We are going to the public. Maybe the police cars. To general public folks who want to sign up for something like they did in Tampa to get some diverse usage that will really give us lots of information, high usage folks in that locality, that they are communicating to each other. They're communicating with our roadside units also.
The confusion, Michael, would be that I think, obviously for a long-term design, you would not put a new onboard unit into any new vehicle because that hardware is already there. For a experiment done today, you have to put an onboard unit into the car because you're doing your experiment.
Totally disagree. And the reason I disagree is that
if you want to put it into my 91 Acura,
let him say, Brad, let him.
No, I might not be able to put it in your 91 Acura, but I don't think we're doing tests with 91 Acuras. Even if we are, we shouldn't be. We have every single vehicle that's produced today has a telematics system built in, like OnStar, like Volvo On Call, like BMW Connect. All of the cars have a.
Not Mazda.
So don't use Mazda.
I'll remember that.
Who buys Mazdas anyway?
Whoa!
Hell, my first
Ouch.
car was a Mazda.
We're not supposed
It was cool.
My wife's first car was a Mazda too. Look, I mean, we all make mistakes. I bought a Ford Cortina. Look, what I'm saying is, if you want to do tests with vehicles, pick a vehicle that has a communication system already built in, which is most vehicles except for Mazda. Sorry, and go ahead. Talk. I mean, the R&D departments in these. If the car companies have the choice of saying, we're either going to force you to put a device in the vehicle that we'll communicate with, or we'll use the systems that you already have. Go back to the e-call system situation. The OEMs that already begun putting in systems in the vehicles that could do everything that the European e-call does.
I will say this. I think in theory that makes sense, that once you have a connectivity module in there, any connected service you add to that vehicle should take advantage in some way, or should be able to take advantage of the existing module that you've got there. But I would point out that in my market, in connected mobility, most of the OEMs that are implementing, car sharing are adding a module to the car. They are not taking advantage of the existing connected device in the car.
I mean, I have the most connected car, the Tesla, as well as the old Acura. And if it were to participate in some experiment, it could only do so if Tesla agreed to modify their systems, because they have complete lockdown, as they need to for other reasons.
I thought
on the connectivity
aren't the
system.
APIs accessible on Tesla?
You can't just install random apps on a Tesla, but you do have a web browser, so you can go to random websites.
Look, as far as I know that the messages
service providers. If I have a fleet of Teslas I want to deploy, I can tap into the data stream from those Teslas using. I think there's an open API.
I think Tesla needs to give you permission, but anyway.
But that may be.
Yeah. Michael.
Yes, the messages that are coming in from roadside units, from DOTs, those messages aren't controlling the vehicle. They aren't telling the vehicle to turn or to stop. They're messages that are provided to the customer, to the driver, to say something. We're not controlling the vehicle, correct, Cynthia?
Not yet.
Correct, that's true, but
Correct.
we don't have a way to interpret it. That's what sort of the device is, to that translation of what does that mean through the car. Yeah.
You provide the messages that are coming in. I mean, I 30 years ago, I was working on RDS TMC, and this was data that was coming into the vehicle, the first connectivity, data coming into the vehicle in a broadcast, FM broadcast, and was being processed into data messages, just visual messages. And then those went into the data, into the map data, and they were displayed along with the map, saying, there's a problem here, or the traffic flow is very slow here. This is 30 years ago. Now,
we put it in Copilot. Go ahead.
A simple traffic message that comes in that can be interpreted and visually displayed. It can either be displayed on the head unit, like the display, or it can be displayed on another part, another display in the device, in the vehicle. These messages can easily be incorporated. You just need to work. I mean, if you want to work with General Motors, you work with Ford, or Chrysler, all of them have a connectivity module that can be used for this purpose.
So Roger,
yeah.
I just wanted to well, it's kind of late to correct this misapprehension, but of course this group is about self-driving vehicle technology and connected vehicles.
Oh, the overall group itself, yes.
Okay. And driverless too. Don't forget driverless, please. Thank you.
But that's Alan's favorite word, and my least. But because it's kind of, I think it's like horseless. But anyway, that's another argument we can have another day. But the thing that made me, as a person mostly interested in self-driving car technology, interested in what was going on in the ITS world and the V2V world, was that everyone started insisting, because everyone insisted this when they heard that self-driving cars were going to be hot, that our technology is essential for making a self-driving car. You couldn't possibly think about making a self-driving car unless you included DSRC or V2V or V2X or CV2X.
No.
Which and then the next one to glom onto that was 5G. Everyone said, well, the clear thing that's necessary. One of my clients was Deutsche Telekom, and they were very disappointed when I told them, the cars don't really need 5G. In fact, they'd be probably okay with 3G for most of what they do. And that is the truth. They don't actually need it. Now, I mean, more bandwidth is good. More connectivity in different places is good. Nobody is going to not want that. But as an essential, it's not an essential. All these cars have to be able to drive perfectly, well, not perfectly safely as they can drive without any connectivity to anywhere. They just use the connectivity for little extra perks and benefits.
Okay, well, so I was doing a fireside chat with Reinhard Yerk from BMW back in the fall. Remember when we used to go to events and speak and things like that? This is in Munich, yes. And he started our conversation by saying that connectivity was absolutely necessary for autonomous vehicles. I said, oh, okay, that's an interesting perspective. But by the time we got to the end of the 20-minute conversation, he said, yeah, but you can't rely on it. So I was taking exception to the sort of absolutist point of view that we absolutely do not need under any circumstances connectivity. It's like, whoa, wait a minute. If it's going to be helpful, why wouldn't you take advantage of it? It's not a question of we are never going to be connected. Of course, you're going to be connected at some point or another, but not for specifically the real-time autonomous operation. No,
exactly. And if you read my essay, the title of this car, that's what it says.
The title of this presentation was "Everybody Agrees Connectivity is Good." There's no disagreement on that. Of course,
I think there are a lot of people who think connectivity is mandatory. And then we have a long way to go.
Well,
that's
because
I often see
mandatory for it needs to be there as either a fallback or for remote control under emergency circumstances, or to extract or deliver data to or from the vehicle. Yeah, okay.
And there was a long effort in Congress to try and get a mandate that DSRC radios go into every new car manufactured.
Really?
And
you'll have to tell me about that someday.
Yeah, I will someday. You'll have heard about it. Yeah, I'm telling this to the whole audience.
We weren't going to go there. Remember, we said we weren't going to go there.
Well, no, but the point is, this is an example of people going around saying, "Oh, this is important. This is mandatory. You couldn't possibly work without this." And this is where the debate actually comes. No, nobody says. So I wrote an essay called "The Disconnected Car," but it begins by saying, you're going to have connectivity, but you want as little as possible, and you want to understand why you're doing it and what its safety and privacy and security implications are. And that's unfortunately not what many people are doing. Not everyone. Most people, hopefully, most people are smart enough to realize that everything has those implications.
The ultimate disingenuousness of the people making that claim that it was absolutely necessary for autonomous operation was they were sort of wink, avoiding the reality of what they were trying to suggest, which was that the DSRC would de facto be connected to the brake or the steering from day one, which was never going to be the case from day one. It would take a very long time.
In a self-driving car, it effectively was.
Yeah, but
in a self-driving car, a car was supposed to say, "I've been told by DSRC that there is an obstacle on the road ahead of me. For some reason, my sensors aren't seeing it, and therefore." Well, no, but I mean, what was it for if it wasn't for this situation where it's
right? Exactly. But
so therefore, I will do an emergency brake, and if you're not going to do that, what is it for?
Yes.
Well, we have a member of the audience who insists on asking a question.
Yeah, let's have Andrew in here. Come on, Andrew. Unmute yourself. Or Jeremiah, unmute Andrew.
There he goes. Okay.
There we go.
Now. We can't see you, but we can hear you.
We still got 70 crazy people watching this, so I don't know why.
Well, they may not all be crazy.
No, there's about 80 people watching and 70 crazy people.
Okay.
Right. Andrew.
Speak.
Connectivity.
Yeah. AV is easy when it means automated vehicle, and AV is hard when it means audiovisual. So how do you...
Andrew.
As I was saying before, and I see a lot of literature, mainly coming from the public sector, that talks about two types of vehicles. There's usually AV, autonomous vehicle, or CAV, connected and autonomous.
Yeah, CAV gets talked about quite a bit.
Two very different things, and I have a hard time seeing that.
There is a lot of blending on that topic, yes.
Well, it's primarily because of the European Commission has established connected and automated vehicles as a focus area. So most of what we're doing in Europe is related to connected and automated vehicles. And automated vehicles, to me, does not cover driverless vehicles. Automated vehicles, for me, is advanced driver assistance systems.
I agree. There's something, autonomous vehicles are close to driverless, but automated can have a lot of other technology in it.
Now, the joke I make about this, I say connected autonomous vehicle, pick two.
Yeah. And Andrew, are you online again? Do you want to, do you have a question, a comment?
Connectivity, the internet booted me out.
You're very quiet.
You're very quiet. You have to get closer to your microphone.
I'm saying that
can't hear you.
Can't hear you.
Well, hold on, everyone be quiet and we will be able to hear him.
Can you hear me now? I'm much
clearly.
Yeah.
It's better.
That was a connectivity issue. The internet kicked me out and restarted. So with all that sort of issues of if connectivity is going to be used for cars in some form where it's a safety factor, what happens when the connectivity isn't working?
Well, yeah. So we can only add to safety. It can't be your primary source of safety. It can provide you additional data, which you can use to help make safety decisions. But you have to be what you'll call safe enough without the connectivity. And safe enough has to be very, very safe. So the best that the connectivity can do is make a very small, not zero, but a very small increase in your safety.
The interesting thing about C-V2X or 5G connectivity is that the direct vehicle-to-vehicle communication will work whether or not the cellular modem is provisioned. So that's, again, a significant change that will offer that incremental safety value proposition.
I was wondering if anybody knows how successful or unsuccessful insurance companies have been in getting people to put the devices in the car to communicate back to them how fast you're driving, et cetera, what your driving habits are.
I don't think I think you're talking about usage-based insurance, and I don't think anymore.
So that's only done by Progressive, mainly because in the United States, because they have a patent on doing that, and they blocked out most of the other insurance companies from doing it. But
no, I beg to differ. Globally, there are hundreds of insurance companies that have solutions.
I said in the United States, yeah.
Well, in the United States, there'll be dozens. So almost every insurance company, and there are many more of them than you would realize, have some kind of a device. Some of them are using an OBD. Some of them are using a smartphone app. I don't think any more than 10% of people are really interested in this. I mean, talk about sharing your data with Google. You want to share your data with your insurance company? There are limitations, and one of the challenges in introducing this kind of a program in the U.S. is the fact that you have 50 insurance regulators, one for every state, which is why it's so popular in the UK, because you have just one regulatory authority for the entire country, and you have a lot of lousy drivers. But anyway, the point is, I look at it, it's a niche market for young people or for poor drivers or people with bad driving histories. It's maybe in some cases the only way to get a reasonably priced insurance offering, and typically it's very limited what they look at. Time of day, amount of driving, harsh braking, harsh acceleration. Typically, they cannot use your location. And my favorite is in Europe, they can't use your gender. Although there is an insurance company in the UK called Drive Like a Girl, which is one of my favorites. But it's very widespread still.
Yeah. Let me say, we're close to the end of our third half hour. Let me ask if people have any final comments you want to leave the audience with, or things do you have anything you want to add to what you said before? Or?
The next time you have a meeting, invite everybody. Invite the car company. Invite a car company.
Well, we as you know,
I can tell you that during the e-call sessions, there were very few car companies that were involved, and during the cellular V2X issues that are addressed, oftentimes there are not car companies in the room. Invite everybody, because it's a discussion that everyone has to have together. Everyone has interest, and everyone wants the same thing. They want safer cars. They want less expensive cars. They want cars that people want to drive or drive in or be driven in. Everybody wants the same thing. It's not a matter of any one group deciding for everyone else.
Well,
We
that's how
did attempt.
that's how we basically structured this. Everybody is for connectivity, but there are these different facets, and somehow these different facets have caused us to somehow not progress it as well as we should have progressed it to this point. And we certainly didn't try to keep out the car companies in this discussion.
No, I think
This
Michael
is-
was talking
this is-
about everyone should be inviting the car companies. The regulators should be inviting them, and not just our panel.
Yeah. Okay. So yes, absolutely.
But one of
Everybody
the
should-
questioners actually asked this question just now and says, why is it the view in this session has been very much at odds with what is a common wisdom among DOTs and various regulators who all are very big on V2X, they're very big on these things, and why are we so much at odds with them? And I puzzle over that myself sometimes. And I have an uncharitable answer, which is that everybody, myself included, is always interested in the thing that you work on being the solution to the big problem. And so everybody wants to be that important party, and not everyone will get to be. And you can have arguments about what it should be, but that's the instinct people have. It's a natural instinct.
I would.
That's my problem. Okay, of course, I have the same problem, Brad.
We all have that problem.
I'm
ITS,
interested in what I'm interested in.
I think you're talking about the ITS community, and they need to do a better job of getting the OEMs at the table. To Michael's point.
Thank you.
Let me go to ask Kara and Cynthia as the honorary sharks, if you have any last comments.
Thanks for asking. I still am worried about the long turnover time on the existing vehicle fleet. So that's why I still advocate for something inexpensive and easy to place as a retrofit, like radar in the dashboard, through the windshield. And so I know it might get eclipsed eventually, Brad and Michael, but I do think maybe DSRC is that technology, and it won't avoid all crashes. I forget his name. He's one of those on the chat list, but yeah, I do think that some of us here in the chat area, we're thinking there's not enough discussion of that kind of safety for the existing fleet as well. And I know it still has to ping the driver, and she still has to react in time. And so you're not going to avoid, many types of crashes, but it does seem like a smart move long-term.
Well, why not the cell phone? Why isn't the cell phone the thing that brings connectivity, has already brought connectivity into almost every car?
Oh, I think the
That's
lag
another
time on that is very high right now. But yeah, maybe if you have to place the cell phone kind of in the right position on your dashboard and lock it in there, and to provide that kind of radar and communication. But yeah, you can easily put DSRC on new cell phones.
By the way, I don't agree that you have to put the phone up there. Obviously, you get better radio signal if you position the antenna well. But something that's in 100% of cars, but only has 80% of them with good signal, is much better than something that's in 1% of cars. Because it's the square of the penetration which controls the efficacy of any kind of collision avoidance involving this technology.
Yeah.
And you're not worried about latency on these current phones?
I'm worried about it, but the latency requirements are, most applications don't have, less than 10 millisecond latency needs. You can certainly do stuff with latencies of 10 to 20 milliseconds on cell phones.
Okay, I think we could go on for a while. I think we need to.
Cynthia, do you have a
Cynthia, do you have any comment?
Appreciate the conversation. We absolutely positively want to engage with OEMs. We do have separate conversations with them. We certainly appreciate the TRB forum for automated vehicles. I know that's automated vehicles include some connectivity, but CAMP is the group, the Coalition for Metrics. So anyway, we want them to be engaged, but we're not going to pay them for it or sell them on it. But we want to be good partners. So can't wait for things to get safer.
Metrics, yeah.
Yes, crash avoidance. Thank you.
Yeah. Right, I enjoy this as always. I will say, one thing I find useful to do afterwards is look through the whole list of chats. I don't have the time to read it while we're online, but I find it every session we do is very, very useful. Fred, Alan, do you have any comments?
Well, I think we have to see how we can distribute that. I think we probably have to take the names off of it, because people are putting in there or chatting, but I guess we have to sanitize it a little bit like that. But it certainly would be good to have the comments out there, and everybody's an expert here. Everybody is deep into this, and everybody's opinion really matters. So let's see if we can put it out there. We're going to try to do this as Dick said again before the end of the month. Our next topic, we're still trying to decide, might be insurance, might be something else. We welcome any suggestions by anybody that's still on there or the people that are still with us. And we think that this having a forum in which there's open discussion is really good, and this is open discussion.
I feel very comfortable here. I'm not the smartest guy in the room.
Okay, well,
very important not to be the smartest guy in the room.
Let's not vote on that.
Yeah, because I'm gonna lose.
We do have the audience pick the dumbest guy in the room.
I got it. I want that one. I want that one.
The audience also picked the best bookcase, but we'll leave that. Yeah. We'll leave their judgment to another.
I have the best.
I'll have to work on showing a better bookcase.
I won that until they found that I was cheating, and it's not actually there. It's in the next room. That bookcase.
Yeah. See, there you go. I wasn't going to bring that up, Brad, but there you go. Okay.
It is. No, that is one of my bookcases. It really is one of my bookcases.
Right.
All right.
It's just not the one of my studio.
Good stuff.
Anyway, thank you for everybody for joining with us. Hope you enjoyed it. Look for us next time. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Very good. Thank you, Fred.
Yeah. Don't forget, you can find us at zoom-tank.com and at smartdrivingcar.com. The Automated Vehicle Symposium still slated for the end of July in San Diego. Head to automatedvehiclessymposium.org for more info. Thank you once again for watching or listening, taking part. Please stay healthy and safe.
Thank you.
Yeah, very good.
Jeremiah, who turns it off?